We got a defensive tackle that the Oklahoma Sooners are in the top 3-4. We're going to talk a couple players that are heading to the NFL and what it means for those position groups. And I got a little recruiting nugget as well to discuss on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, so subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. He's Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. And Josh, before we get started on just kind of the Oklahoma latest on the football field, I feel like it's important that we just kind of touch on the Damar Hamlin situation. If you hadn't heard by now, during the Monday Night Football broadcast game between the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals, Damar Hamlin collapsed and went into cardiac arrest. He was resuscitated on the field after 8-9 minutes of CPR. They did get a pulse back and took him to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, where, according to the Buffalo Bills' latest update, he is still in critical condition, still on the ventilator. And so sitting waiting, but just terrible news. And yeah, Josh, our thoughts and our prayers go out to to Damar Hamlin, first of all, his family, the Buffalo Bills family, and then just all the players across the NFL. You know, this is one of those situations that whether you're the person that is touched by it or you're associated with the game, which it's just a game. Everybody is kind of affected in some form or fashion, Josh.
Yeah. And look, there's not positives in a situation like this, but it was, if there's anything that you can say that was nice about the situation, I think it's that, to me, love of a teammate and, love of a player won out here. I think the NFL got the decision right to not continue the game. So that part was good. The donation side, it's been honestly kind of incredible to see the outpouring of support just in some small way, shape, or form. Fans donating there to Damar Hamlin's toy drive, I think it was, right? Just to show support for him and for his family. So that was neat from a fan's perspective, but just a sad night in the sports world. So much so that, John, you and I discussed on this channel, and not to make this thing about us because it's not about us, but for Locked On Sooners, we always do the live shows on Monday night. It didn't feel appropriate for us to do the live show on Monday night with everything that was going on and transpiring in Cincinnati. We sort of just made the call that, look, it's not the right time to be talking about Oklahoma Sooners football with what was going on with Damar Hamlin up in Cincinnati. So just his family, we're keeping you guys in our thoughts here on the Locked On Sooners podcast. We hope, we're praying, we're thinking that we hope we're going to get good news. And obviously, I mean, there's just no easy way to segue from that news. And we just continue to hope that we're going to get some finality of good news here.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I'm hopeful, the fact that they were able to get him back so quickly. That's a credit to the medical staff that was there on the field, on site, to be able to recover him. If you're looking for something to kind of hang your hat on, he's a young, very athletic guy. That tends to bode well for people if they have a heart issue or a heart concern. So I'm not going to speculate as to what's going to happen or what might have happened or why it happened. But if you want something to kind of like hang hope on, as a nurse that works cardiovascular intensive care myself, people who are young, fit, they generally do better. They have a better chance after something like this. Again, we're going to pray. We're going to continue to pray and send our warmest thoughts out there to his family, to him, to the University of Cincinnati medical staff, to the Buffalo Bills community as well. Bills Mafia, Sooner Nation is in your corner as well. So yeah, but we're gonna talk Oklahoma football as well because that's what you're here for. We're gonna try to discuss that. I know there's no real, like Josh said, no real easy way to segue into this, but you're here for that. So we're also going to talk about that. So Josh, the Oklahoma Sooners are looking to kind of bolster their defensive front. They got Isaiah Coe back, which we talked about a couple episodes ago, or on our last episode, actually, which I think is good for the depth chart. It's good for the group. He had some really strong numbers, finished fourth in tackles for loss on the season with 8, despite playing 80 fewer snaps than Jalen Redmond. Just had a couple tackles for loss fewer than Redmond did on the season. So that was big, but they're still looking to kind of bolster that position group a little bit. Todd Bates, excellent recruiter. They're getting Derek LeBlanc for the interior defensive line, added Ashton Sanders, Marcus Strong, but trying to get somebody with a little bit more experience, a little bit, of college football snaps under his belt. And so they're targeting Davon Sears. Oklahoma, along with Tennessee and Penn State, are in the running there for Sears. Texas State transfer by way of Ellsworth Community College up there in Iowa. So this guy's taking a little bit of a roundabout way to the Power 5. Josh, just kind of your impressions of Davon Sears.
The circuitous, the scenic route is what Davon Sears has taken. My impressions, I don't know much about him. Obviously I'm probably, like some Oklahoma fans, starting to learn about Sears as he finds his way onto the Oklahoma Sooners radar here. Hopeful that he picks Oklahoma because, look, Oklahoma will take as much defensive line, especially interior defensive line help, as they can get. And somebody that is 6'2", 290, and has multiple years of eligibility remaining, why not take a chance on somebody like that? The statistical numbers look like this: 15 total tackles last season with Texas State, 3.5 of which were TFLs, tackles for loss. The 1 sack in what was, I think, John, you started digging into some of the snap count numbers, not a full every down kind of player for Texas State. So you start thinking about, okay, well, if he translates at Oklahoma and, really gets a full run of things, well, all of a sudden 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, it can be much more inflated beyond just that. But from, again, what we keep talking about with some of these additions out of the transfer portal, if nothing else, from a depth standpoint, would love to get Davon Sears into the fold. And obviously, this is someone that a couple of programs out there view as a high major talent, right? When you're in the mix battling both Tennessee and Penn State, that gives you the indication, John, that this would be a nice little recruiting coup for Oklahoma out of the transfer portal if they're able to ultimately win the recruitment for one Davon Sears. So don't know, again, a ton beyond sort of what the numbers look like, but it would be a nice pairing to add with Lacey and some of the other things Oklahoma has done on the defensive front out of the transfer portal.
So just to dig into the numbers a little bit more, Davon Sears was the 8th highest graded player, according to Pro Football Focus, on Texas State's defense, the 2nd highest graded defensive lineman. I'd probably have to go watch some film just to see kind of what alignment they run. But, if he's your 2nd interior defensive lineman off the bench, then, you're probably running a 3-man front. By snap count, that's the way it looks, is Nico Isadore was the number 1 defensive tackle getting snaps. The other interior defensive line player after that, he was 2nd among interior defensive line players in snaps with 355. So that might give you a little bit of an indication as to why maybe he's transferring, is probably looking for more snaps. But again, to be the 8th highest graded player, according to Pro Football Focus, that's not bad. That's pretty solid. As far as pass rush goes, he was the 6th highest graded player on Texas State's defense. And then in run defense, he was the 7th highest graded run defender for Texas State. So, from Pro Football Focus's perspective, he's a solid player. Like, at least he was for the Texas State Bobcats. Again, it's not super high level competition, but I mean, he was somebody that was not super highly regarded coming out of the JUCO route, only had 3 offers, but people like Tennessee, Oklahoma, Penn State, they've taken notice. So there's something there that these coaches are seeing, these position coaches are seeing, that they think he can add something to their defensive tackle rotation. So intriguing prospect, to say the least, somebody that we'll kind of keep an eye on as if he does end up coming to Oklahoma, spring practice, spring game, just to kind of see what he has in the tank for the Sooners potentially. So Josh, we've got a couple players that decided to go to the NFL. I mean, they didn't really have many options left eligibility wise, but they're gone. What does it mean for the linebacker and the tight end group? We'll talk about that after we talk to you about LinkedIn.
You need the right people on your team to help you and your small business fire on all cylinders. That's why you head on over to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, where you can post your job faster and for free. It's going to set you up to find those people that you want to talk to again faster. It's simple. You just add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. And then your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right set of skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm going to talk to you about BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and the easiest place to bet on all your favorite sports, from NFL to college football, MMA, boxing, NHL, Major League Baseball futures as well. BetOnline is the place to go if you want to get in on the college football playoff national championship game between TCU and Georgia. Right now, TCU is a minus 13-point underdog. I don't know, with as many close games as they've played this year, it'd be hard for me to bet against the Horned Frogs on that front. It's not my official pick just yet. We'll talk about that later in the week, but you can get in on the action over at BetOnline. Again, the fastest and the easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. So Josh, DaShaun White, the cheetah, heading to the NFL. First of all, just kind of maybe what do you think his pro prospects are? A guy like him who, played a lot at Oklahoma, wasn't overly dominant in any fashion or any form or fashion, but has a lot of experience, does have some tools. It's just hard to kind of put a gauge on where he lands. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like Trey Norwood and Trey Brown when they came out, solid players for Oklahoma, but not, again, overly dominant players.
I don't know what to make of his NFL future. I hope he latches on somewhere. Just sort of judging by the NFL draftbuzz.com profile out there, they've got DaShaun White listed as the 67th linebacker, which you're not getting drafted if you're the 67th linebacker. So hopefully, if nothing else, he gets, you hope that one team, it only takes one throughout these next couple of months when you've got obviously some showcase opportunities, workouts at Oklahoma, to have a team fall in love with you, right? So it only takes one team to fall in love with you. Hopefully that happens for DaShaun White. He is sort of in that undrafted free agent kind of realm, I think, going into this thing, which, again, just hope that there's an opportunity, right, for him to sign on and get into a camp, and then who knows from there. He can fly around and put a hat on the football and make some plays. Again, just judging the tea leaves out there, I don't know that he's getting drafted, John, unless these next couple of months, unless he just wows some people.
Yeah, that I kind of fall into that 6th, 7th undrafted range for him. Like you said, it just takes one team to really fall in love, and he's got some good traits. Like he's got some decent coverage skills. He is an athletic linebacker. He can run a little bit. And so at worst, I feel like he could be a rotational linebacker for somebody and a special teams player, but you don't necessarily have to draft that guy. Like that guy could fall to you in undrafted free agency. But, if he does well, in the combine or at Oklahoma's pro day, he could, find himself with an opportunity. It just takes a really good day, in some of the testing drills that might surprise some people. Again, I wasn't sure that Trey Norwood was going to get drafted 2 years ago, and he was. So again, it just takes one team to really like your tape, and he's had some games that he puts some really good tape on. In maybe a defense has got some better talent around him. Maybe he plays a little bit better. The next one, Brayden Willis, again, a guy that ran out of eligibility, heading to the NFL. I like his pro prospects a little bit better. Just speaking specifically, I think he could get drafted inside of 5 rounds. Now, he's not going to show up on any top 10 lists as far as the top tight ends in the draft class, but the thing he does that's NFL ready is his blocking ability. He can step in right now and be somebody's tight end 2 or tight end 3 immediately. first day of camp, he can be a backup tight end, or at worst, a tight end 3 for somebody. His experience as an H-back allows him some versatility that he can line up in the backfield for some teams. And at the tight end position, most NFL teams, they want to be able to use that guy as a fullback as well, so they don't have to take up a roster spot for a guy that might play 10 snaps. But a guy like Brayden Willis, you might get him on the field 25 snaps because he can play in 12 personnel, he can play in 13, he can play in 23, he can play as your fullback in 21 personnel. So I really like what Brayden Willis can bring to a team. And then we saw him have a breakout season in 2022 as a receiver. And we lost Josh's internet there for a second. So I'll continue to rail on about Brayden Willis. A guy who's a leader that's going to stand out for NFL teams, a guy who has just heart and hustle. I look back at the play against, I believe it was UTEP, where Gavin Freeman takes the jet sweep in the end around, and Brayden Willis blocks 2 guys, and then he basically chases Gavin Freeman down the field and blocks a 3rd guy to get him into the end zone. Just does everything really, really well. Just a really unique situation, because for several years he rotated with Jeremiah Hall and Austin Stogner at the tight end H-back position, so wasn't able to get a full opportunity at tight end to fully showcase what he could do. But this year, with Stogner gone to South Carolina, now back, Jeremiah Hall off to the NFL, Brayden Willis got a full complement of snaps, and I think that really is what allowed him to showcase his abilities. So I think we might have Josh back now. Josh, yeah. So your thoughts on Brayden Willis and maybe his draft stock.
He kind of reminds me of another Sooner that has carved out a nice little NFL career. He reminds me a little bit of Blake Bell in the sense that he has maybe not the elite athleticism that some other tight ends out there in this draft class would have, but because of the full portfolio of just his physicality, John, and he is able to go catch the football, run with it. Not that he can't go make plays that a tight end would make, but because of his willingness to be an able blocker, right? To be physical, both in the backfield and at the line of scrimmage. Blake Bell's carved out himself a nice little NFL career, right? And I see some of those similar qualities for Brayden Willis. I'm honestly, man, look, I know there's some really, really good tight ends in this draft class when you start looking at Bowers, Kincaid, right? Laporta at Iowa is a really nice tight end. There's some nice tight ends in this draft class. I don't understand why Brayden Willis is so far down the board. To me, Brayden Willis is somebody that absolutely you can draft, and he can be a good pass catcher for you and kind of a Swiss Army knife in terms of the backfield and blocking and some different things that he can do for you. So I just looking up and seeing the NFL mock draft profile for him. They've got him as an undrafted free agent. Same thing with the NFL Draft Buzz website. They've got him as an undrafted free agent. That to me is very surprising with Brayden Willis. It's, not to pick on DaShaun White or whatever, but I wasn't surprised to see that with DaShaun White. I'm surprised to see that with Brayden Willis, that they don't have him even as a flyer 6th, 7th round NFL draft type projection. I think he should get drafted. I think he will get drafted. And I can see him having a very productive career in the National Football League, not necessarily being, your Kittle or Travis Kelce type, but John, a legitimate rostered tight end for a series of years, just because, again, he's a willing teammate, great blocker, and I think, yes, can go catch the football and make some things happen afterwards.
You mentioned Blake Bell. As you're talking, the name that really stuck out to me, and this might be because you're a Chiefs fan and I'm a Cowboys fan, is Dalton Schultz. So Dalton Schultz, tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, not the most athletic player, but coming out of Stanford, what he did really, really well was block. He blocked really, really well for the Stanford Cardinal because they don't throw the football a lot. They run the ball. And he carved out a nice niche for himself the first couple of years with Dallas, and then became the starter when Jason Witten finally retired again, and Blake Jarwin kept dealing with injury issues. Dalton Schultz got an opportunity to get on the field. He had opportunities early because he was a good blocker, but then he started to showcase his pass catching skills. I think the same could be true for Brayden Willis. Gets on the field early because he's a good blocker, able to do some things in the run game, but then we'll find some opportunities, maybe year 2, year 3 to catch the football. So I think I'm surprised with, like you, that maybe people are not so high on Brayden Willis yet, but I think he's going to be one of those kind of late risers. Maybe not enough people are talking about him just yet, but I'm seeing guys like Marcus Mosher of the Locked On Cowboys podcast and the Raiders Wire. He's talking about him as one of his favorite tight ends in this draft class. So the buzz is there for him now with at least one guy I know that I follow. I imagine that the buzz will continue to grow as we get towards the NFL draft combine and the actual NFL draft. So, but Josh, so for linebacker, for tight end, you can pick whichever one you want to start with. What does it mean for, let's start with linebacker. What does it mean for linebacker? We're seeing DaShaun White go off to the NFL.
Well, it means we're where we always knew we were going to be at the end of this season, which is Oklahoma's kind of got some inexperience at linebacker, right? We'll see, Aguebu, probably, another player maybe you're looking at replacing right there as well. So Stutzman, I think you got a bona fide star in the making. He's incredible start to his career. So you've got that there. Then probably beyond that, you're looking at a couple of young linebackers that need to grow up in a hurry and go be players for you. And there's one name that I think Sooner fans have in mind, in Jaren Kanak, that they're ready, right, to see an elevated role. Lewis, that's somebody that, what does now true freshman into a sophomore season? What does, or redshirt freshman season, what does that look like? Can he make a big leapfrog jump and potentially be a legitimate factor for Oklahoma? That's kind of where I think we're at, man, where you're counting on some younger guys now to step into leading roles, and that's college football. You got one guy you feel really good about, and then maybe some unknowns beyond that.
Yeah, you hope that these guys do grow into those roles. Now, I think they've got really good competition. Excuse me. At linebacker with the guys they signed in 2022, the guys they're bringing in 2023. So I think there's going to be some really interesting competition that takes place to figure out who fills David Aguebu's role, who fills the Cheetah role for the Oklahoma Sooners in 2023. At tight end, I mean, thank goodness you got Austin Stogner back, because now you have a really nice floor for what you're going to get at the tight end position. And if Jason Llewellyn and Caden Helms take a job or take snaps from Austin Stogner, potentially you're raising that floor and raising that ceiling of what the tight end position can be for you. It's going to be a really interesting position to watch. On the recruiting front, Josh, the Oklahoma Sooners ended up in the top 8 for 4-star linebacker Stacy Gage, along with high-profile teams across the country, including, I don't have it right in front of me, but I'm getting it really quick: Colorado, Alabama, Florida, Penn State, USC, Ohio State, and Miami. Just your thoughts just on Gage. I mean, it could be on Gage or just the big picture view of the running back position.
Well, just real quick on the tight ends, I think we've touched on this before in the past, but the addition of Stogner is somebody that brings to Oklahoma great stability at the tight end position, someone we've seen here in Norman produce in a big way. And I think, assuming that we get a decision on Gabriel soon, that he's coming back, he's got a great signal caller to get him the football. And I think Oklahoma fans can look forward to a bunch of production from Stogner if he can just stay healthy. That gives you a little bit more time to continue to slowly add that seasoning to both Caden Helm and Jason Llewellyn. So that part is positive for Oklahoma there. And then, man, what else can you say about DeMarco Murray other than this guy's going to bring talented running backs to Oklahoma? You're with some pretty big-time programs there when you look at, Alabama, Ohio State, USC that you're jockeying for here. And I know that there's more beyond that, but just who 247 Sports list as kind of the warm programs in Stacy Gage's list right there. That's to be expected when you're going after a blue chip running back. But man, DeMarco Murray, year after year, he's going to land a top-notch running back, blue chip running back or two. Maybe Stacy Gage out of the Southeast is the latest. That's another angle there for Oklahoma, right? Is we'll see if they win this little recruiting war, but man, another kid out of Tampa, Florida that Oklahoma's right in the mix for. OU has, Georgia, Florida, just anywhere on that kind of like southeast coastline. Oklahoma's starting to really make some inroads there with this staff.
Yeah, and the last kind of predictions that came in on Stacy Gage came in back in March when he was a visitor with Oklahoma. Josh McQuistion of Sooner Scoop at Rivals put in a future cast on Gage, and Parker Thune, our guy over at OU Insider and 247 Sports, put in a crystal ball back in March. Now, that's a long time ago. A lot could have changed in those recruitments, and it's a long time until the early signing period, National Signing Day, but it gives you kind of an indication as to how he's, or at least how he was feeling at the time about Oklahoma. Again, a lot can change in a month, a lot can change in 9 months, or in certain circumstances, a lot can change in 24 hours. So who knows where he's at right now. The other one, they got into the top 15 on KJ Bolden, a top five player in the 2024 cycle, arguably the number one safety in the class, down there out of Georgia. The Oklahoma Sooners, I mean, again, it's the cream of the crop of college football: Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, USC, Michigan, Michigan State, Ole Miss, Oregon, like name a team, and Florida State, Miami, all these guys are in on KJ Bolden as well. Super athletic player. Just watched a little bit of his huddle. And I mean, this guy could probably start at wide receiver for a lot of Power 5 programs, even though they're projecting him as a safety. He's just a very athletic player, plays fast, is good with the ball in his hands after the catch. As a safety, I see a physical player, again, a guy who plays fast. And to me, that's the thing that stands out about what Brent Venables is looking for, is he's looking for players that play fast. And this guy kind of fits the bill.
Man, that would be a big time recruiting win for Oklahoma. You know, just with him being out of Georgia, I think most people, and I'm just judging here based on, there's no crystal balls in for KJ Bolden, but they've got Georgia listed as warm and everybody else is cool. So at least early on, sort of the perception, it seems like from 24/7 Sports, is that Bolden would ultimately lean Georgia. But we'll see, right? This is a great recruiting staff at Oklahoma. And if you can combine it with a 2023 season that is ahead of schedule, maybe now all of a sudden in people's minds where Oklahoma goes out, wins the Big 12 championship, does some other things, not going to totally put it beyond this staff's ability to sign a player like KJ Bolden. And obviously just the inclusion is a good sign for OU.
Yeah, and it just goes to show that, you know, Brent Venables can still recruit the Southeast, even though he's outside of the Southeast. This connection comes back from his time at Clemson, but the fact that they're still in it, despite the move, I think is going to bode well for Oklahoma. I mean, they show that they can recruit Texas. They've shown that they can recruit in the past. They recruited California well. We'll see how much emphasis they place on California in the future, but the Southeast, Texas, those are going to be their big, you know, quote unquote hunting grounds for prospects in the future. But hey, thank you so much for tuning in. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Again, we're free and available on all podcast platforms. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts and over on YouTube. Also hit the notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. We'll catch you then. Boomer Sooner.